sort of the opening screensaver we had. It's a scene from a movie called Little Buddha, which I'm going to talk about, and I really would recommend you looking at the whole movie. We're going to use a cut of it today, about a 9-minute cut of it in our talk. But this is just for those people on YouTube and who came in late who didn't see it. This is a key point in the Buddha's awakening. All right, so I think that's good enough. Now the historical Buddha lived about 2,500 years ago. We don't quite exactly know. Indian cultures, just because they're so cosmic, don't tend to keep really strict records of dates and stuff, at least in the old times. The Chinese did, for instance. They were very scrupulous about it, totally different kind of mind. But the Indians, and so somewhere 2,500, 2,600 before the Common Era, before Christ lived, uh, Siddhartha was born a prince of a clan, the Sakya clan in northern India, which we'd call now Nepal, so very far north. And there was a bunch of principalities and little clans, and they all had walled kind of cities and et cetera, because they were constantly fighting. It's not that much different than today. Nepal was just an upset just recently. I mean, it's just, I'm telling you, this is the planet. It's a terrible beauty. It's a blessed mess. And so here we are. So Buddha was born into this. And at his birth, an old ascetic, like a wandering hermit from up in the mountains, just wandered in when they were having this big day of the Buddha's birth. And he predicted that the Buddha would be either a king, which would have been his dharma or his path, because he was born into the princely class. They had the caste system there, and you just had to stay in your lane. That was what one of the meanings of dharma back then. So he was, meant to be the king, but this kind of wandering ascetic comes in and he says, "Oh, he could either be a king or a great teacher." Well, his father didn't want to, he wanted to raise him as a king, and a lot of this will be covered in the movie Little Buddha, where they go back and forth from the historical Buddha to some Tibetans looking for a reincarnation of a current Buddhist master. So from modern times, it goes back and forth. It's really a wonderful film. I've watched it many times, and I'll give you links to where you'll watch it for $3.99 on Amazon Prime or on YouTube TV. It's worth the $3.99. I've watched it many times. But I'm just sort of giving you a little summary that you will get in this movie very skillfully. By the way, the guys who play the Tibetan monks are real Tibetan monks, and even Sogyal Rinpoche, who uh, is the Rest in Natural Peace guy, who has passed away now, but he was the guy we listened to when we listened to Rest in Natural Great Peace. He's in it. He's a kind of astrologer monk. He's one of the monks. The monks are great. Yeah, you got to check this out if you haven't seen it, or see it again. I might watch it again this afternoon. Well, anyway, the king wanted him to be a king. To hell with this teacher stuff, and so he sort of kept Siddhartha, which was the Buddha's name, uh, kept him away from anything that was painful. So there was only young people around him. They pampered him, give facials, massages and all that. And he won every game. They had sports. It was all rigged. So Siddhartha always won. He never lost. And so he basically was trying to keep him from any kind of pain or suffering. Well, a curiosity led Siddhartha one day to take a little field trip into the town outside the gate, outside his gated community. And everybody it was all staged. They were all throwing rose petals and, "Oh, great, Siddhartha, he's great, he's great." But then he saw an old guy who somehow got through the guards, and he saw this old man, never seen anybody old, way older than his father. And so he sort of jumped off the parade route and went after this old man. And and then his driver, he said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, that's an old man." And he said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, everybody gets old, and even princes." He said, oh, yes. And then so he went after that, and then he saw a sick man, and he said, what's that? They said, that's a sick man. Everybody gets sick at least once in their life. And they said, even princes? He says, oh, yeah. And then what happens when you get sick? And he said, and then they saw they're taking somebody to be burned by the riverside, which is what they did to burn them in a funeral party. He said, what's that? He said, that's death. And he said, well, I want to see this. And he watched his body be burned up, and it really moved him. And so he left the palace. He left his wife, who was just had a baby, left her. He just said, I got to find out what's going on here. It seemed awful. He said, well, he wanted to find a cure for this kind of suffering. So, he went to the jungle for 6 years, left the palace, and he went to the opposite extreme, which sort of gives you some idea of what we all do. We try to go to the opposite extreme. We're living in a world where there's only, left and right now. No one, and he went to the opposite extreme. When he went into the jungle, he hung out with the ascetics who said, oh, no, to get free of all this, you have to starve the body, because the body, and then your soul will fly free. So he, spent 6 years, most of it starving himself, wasting away, eating 1 grain of rice a day and just drinking a little water out of a puddle or something. And just sitting all the time. So he went to the other extreme. Well, when he almost perished, he had this insight of the middle way, and they show it beautifully in the movie. He said, no, either extreme doesn't work, which far right and far left just doesn't work. We see what we're getting from that. And so he discovered the middle way. And so he built his body back up, and then he sat some more. And then it'll bring us to the part we're going to watch in the movie. All the time, by the way, they're going back and forth, and the monks are looking for the reincarnations of the dead Lama, and they're going to the United States and then Nepal and India, and they're looking for these guys. And so that's where we'll pick up. And so we'll see the Buddha when he finally awakens. And we'll see him confront the 3 obstacles to becoming awake. The Buddha is his nickname. When he finally came out of the forest, much like Jesus, these are 2 guys who got the same questions. They didn't have people, these halos that you see around saints, both in all traditions, this light around these people. Well, that was obvious to people who saw this guy walking down the road, and they said, they didn't say, who are you? They said, what are you? And the Buddha just said, I'm awake. I woke up. And then he spent about 40 or 50 years teaching others. Very different than Jesus. Jesus had a very short teaching career because of the situation and the dynamics of waking up in the Roman Empire. Well, anyway, so Buddha goes on to teach for 40 years, and even invents the idea of the monastery, taking a refuge for a while to focus on awakening. There was no monasteries, and still several religious forms don't have monasteries. They might have temples, but to be able to get a bunch of people to practice together, which we have a little video or a monastery here, because we show up, we practice together today. You say this is a little version of it. Yeah. Well, anyway, okay. So I'm going to go to take you right to the 9-minute cut that shows the enlightenment experience. And then we'll have a little time for reflection. There's a couple of questions, preview questions, that just to put in your mind. You don't have to write these down, but this is the territory we're going to be looking at. What were the obstacles? They're sometimes called the temptations, but really obstacles is the better word. What were the obstacles to the Buddha? The Buddha had to overcome to awaken. What are those obstacles? There's 3 of them. And, it's not surprising. And 500 years later, when Jesus flowers up in the Middle East, he has 3 temptations too. There's always something in between you and just being awake. being totally conscious. What were those for the Buddha? Uh, and there, it's all symbolic. So certain things will resonate to you if you're watching and listening with the ear of your heart, the eye of your heart. Certain things will resonate. Certain symbols, certain actions. So be aware of that. And then, a question would be, what did he awaken from, and what did he awaken to? And finally, just to think about, then you can think about this. I've thought about this for a long time. What is a living Buddha? I mean, the Buddha and, Siddhartha and Yeshua lived, you know, millennia ago. But uh, what does it mean to be a living Buddha or a living Christ? So these are good questions. Okay, so I'm going to uh, cut to the right. Sorry, it took so long. It's a little tricky to bring something to life like that. Now, talk about a couple of things too. I want to reflect on that a little bit. A couple of things that we can reflect on. It struck me uh, how the guy held his seat no matter what. And there was a stillness involved, you see, no matter what comes up, because that was all going on in Siddhartha's mind. You know, you guys have been sitting for a while, or even if you sit once, it could be any version of that that can all of a sudden, pull you off your seat. Uh, I personally like the army with the flaming arrows. We're worried about ice. Well, hold your ground here. Hold your ground. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was very interesting. Uh, well, the three obstacles were desire, fear, and ignorance. Um, Desire is experienced by every human child ever born, all of us, and rightly so, because that desire we want to find our mother's breast. We don't even know that that's that. We just want to find something to hold us, So there's that desire, that's good. That's a survival thing, and then fear also. We experienced both of these the moment we came out of our mother's womb. Desire and fear. Fear is an essential fuel for early childhood development and survival. So we saw desire and we saw fear. And the third part, when everything sort of settles down and he sees his own image in the water and he goes to touch it, and then the image goes out and grabs it. That's my favorite of all. That's called ignorance. So desire, fear, and ignorance. Now, ignorance in Sanskrit is avidya. Avidya doesn't mean like low IQ ignorant. Yeah, a better translation would be confusion and um, and uh, you're confused about what's real. And that was in that last encounter. Uh, some of the other symbols that I resonated with, just real briefly, and then hopefully you can see the movie. And then see the scene again and see what you resonate with. And we can talk about it in the conversation time. He sits under a great tree after restoring his body to health. If you see the movie, you're going to see what he looks like when he's almost starved to death. It's the best bad hair day you'll ever see with Keanu Reeves. It's great. But he brings himself back and he's sitting under this big tree, and the feeling of being grounded. The great roots of the tree there are very important, I think, in the symbolism of this. He found the middle way between the extremes of being indulged in the palace and then starving himself in the jungle. He found the middle way. Um, the desire and distractions, the beauty of the swing. Uh, the one sister tips over the jug of water, it breaks. Uh, Water is always, all the way through, is a symbol of the unconscious, going all the way back, and still is. And so she drops it over and it breaks. He doesn't try to pick it up. goes into a stream becomes a raging river, becomes the ocean, and then finally it becomes the still pond. If you can sit through all those different forms of it, then things will start to become clear. The still pond is clear, and then things start coming up. Yeah. Uh, the huge army with the flaming arrows. Well, yeah, uh, that's just fear, and he sits through it all. He doesn't run away. He doesn't move. Stillness comes through, and clarity comes through. And then the last temptation. Siddhartha, Mara says, "You who go where no one else will go. Will you be my God?" Siddhartha says, "Architect, finally I have met you. You will not rebuild your house again." Mara says, "But I am your house, and you live in me." And then Siddhartha says, "O Lord of my ego, you are pure illusion. You do not exist." And then he touches the ground. And a lot of pictures of the Buddha at the time of enlightenment, he's touching the ground with his right hand. And he says, "The earth is my witness to that." What does all that mean? It's deeply resonant. Uh, Merton, on the last day of his life, he was in Bangkok. He was giving a talk, which we're going to carry on and see some more of that next week when we do part two of this sort of. But he understood that ending with the mirror image. And this is part of his last talk, which hours later on December 10th, 1968, he would, one way or another, graduate on the day of his death. But this is what he said just before he died. He said, "Both Christianity and Buddhism agree that the root of all human problems, the mess, this blessed mess we live in, which is called the world, the root of all human problems is that our consciousness is all fouled up, and we do not apprehend reality as it is fully and really is, as it fully and really is. We do not apprehend. Our consciousness is all fouled up, which is where the Buddha uh, is going. He's working that end of the street about consciousness, and he says all the human problems, our consciousness is all fouled up. Classic Martin language. He used that term a lot. And we do not apprehend reality as it fully and really is, but instead we see a wrong picture of the world in which each of us thinks we exist as an individual ego, a separate self. That is the center of things. That is the source of our problems, said Martin. Yeah. So, ending with that image that the Buddha calls out the illusion of the separate self, that we're disconnected from everything, but also that leads us to a sense of self-centeredness. I'm the one. I'm the most important one here. I'm the captain of my own journey and all that stuff but it's basically that, there's 8 billion human beings on the planet now, and they all pretty much are suffering under the same illusion that I'm the one. And then everybody else, well, is dispensable, or they're like furniture, but I'm the one. I'm the center of the universe. Well, that's only half right. There's a little truth in it, but it's by other parts half wrong. And so this idea of thinking that this self-centeredness that breeds greed and pride and hubris. Mara tries to play on his pride and say, "Oh, will you be my God? Nobody's ever gone this far. Will you be my God?" And he sees through that. How's this working out for all of us on this planet? How is this working out for you to be self-centered, which we all are? We start out that way. The question is, do we grow out of it? The little baby got to be self-centered. Doesn't even know that, for 6 months, you probably don't even know that there's others. But then when others show up, you start to freak out a little bit. Hey, somebody's going to take my milk. And it goes on and on. Do you ever grow out of that? Well, the Buddha was shown the way. And his way, he's always associated. Jesus later, other wisdom figures that were grown up out of this planet have different practices, but everybody always, when you think of Buddha, you think of meditation. And so that's where we're going to go now. So I think that's enough for the talk.